This podcast is dedicated to the celebration and preservation of the working Australian Shepherd. Your Aussie is descended from a proud and amazing lineage of hard-working ranch dogs, identified and cultivated primarily in the Wild West. Contrary to the breed name, the Australian Shepherd is actually an American breed success story. Only in America can a blue-eyed, scruffy dog rise from the dust of the American ranch to become one of the most popular breeds in the world today. The Aussie's beauty, brains, and incredible work ethic and almost empathic connection with their human charges make them unforgettable and pivotal members of the family. My goal is to help you understand this amazing breed, learn more about their heritage and their physical and mental needs so that together we can preserve the working Aussie by encouraging better breeding and better vetting of future Aussie owners, ultimately keeping Aussies with their families and out of shelters. Welcome to the Instinctive Australian Shepherd. Hey Australian Shepherd Nation, Jackie Tinker here with another exciting episode of the Instinctive Australian Shepherd podcast. My guest today is Beth Crandall from Lore A Australian Shepherds. Beth and her family have a line of Australian Shepherds that are working Aussies, and they've been around for a good long time, and many of you that have the working Australian Shepherds from the kind of Northwest region, you're going to see a lot of Lore A dogs in those pedigrees. So, Beth, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk to you about the Aussies.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad you got to come on. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You know what? I forgot to put in my intro that Beth and her dog won the Farm Bureau Farm Dog of the Year award. And we'll put the link to the video in the show notes. It's a really cool video. Farm Bureau does this every year. And the last 2 years have been Australian Shepherds that have won the that I know of anyway, that I've been following it, that have won the Farm Dog of the Year award. So, congratulations. And so introduce us to yourself, what you do, and then talk about your kennel Lore A little bit.
Okay. And yes, the last 2 years, you're correct, have been Australian Shepherds. So I think we should keep the tradition going and have Aussie people continue to apply for that. So it's a really neat experience. So just a little bit about me. I grew up on a ranch in northern New Mexico. My family has ranched most of my life, and I am now living in Utah. I'm married, and my husband's family also ranches. So that's kind of been my entire life is raising cattle, and it's something that I've really enjoyed. And the dogs have been a staple in my life in both of those aspects. A little bit about me getting into dogs. My grandma, Rebecca Anderson, began breeding the Lore A dogs when she was actually a teenager, and her maiden name is Powers. So her and her mom, Loretha Powers, bred this Lore A kennel. They started back in the 1960s. And when I was a teenager, I had actually just lost my kind of childhood dog that I had always had. And my grandma gave me Flint, which is the dog that I now have, my stud that I now have. And she gave him to me when I was about 14. And she actually told me, she said, "This is my contribution to your college fund. Train him and show him and do stuff with him, and you can raise puppies from him." And ever since then, I've been working Flint and using Flint. He was a phenomenal dog. He actually came out of J. Bardee. So Jerry and Sharon Rowe had his dam, and they bred to my grandma's sire that she had. His name was Ranger. And so they bred him together, and my grandma gave me pick of the litter out of that one, and I got the exact dog that I wanted. And I started getting involved in the 4-H dog program. And as part of that, you do showmanship and agility and rally and obedience. And that was kind of my first introduction into the dog performance world. And something that I really loved about it is my dogs were amazing. I was this 14-year-old who had never done any training of any sort on dogs. It was my first year in it, and my dogs went and won the whole thing. I had a Flint and another Australian Shepherd just because they were so biddable and so had such a desire to please and to do whatever I wanted them to do that they just excelled in that area. And that's kind of what got me hooked. I did that all through high school, and it was something that I really loved and enjoyed. And then I moved off to college. Unfortunately, I never really got into the herding competitive world. We used Flint on the ranch here and there. My dad's family, who owned my family's ranch, wasn't real into having dogs on the ranch, so we mostly just took him when it wasn't the whole family going, when it was just me and my dad, and or me and my immediate family going to work. And I also used Flint to actually work my 4-H and FFA animals. So I had goats, and so I would set up little obstacle courses for him to run them through to kind of keep them exercised. So he was always really helpful in that situation as well. So that was kind of my introduction to Australian Shepherds and into the performance world with them, and it was something that I really loved and enjoyed.
That our paths are very similar in that way. I actually got into Aussies through 4-H as well.
Oh, really?
And
that's cool.
That's how I met Dana McKenzie. Actually, was she came to a 4-H class with her strange looking dogs because I had never seen Aussies before, and I thought they were kind of ugly at first. So, but no. Yeah, I know. I love them now, but yeah, and so I ended up back in Minnesota, and my dog's the same way, kind of cleaned up everywhere we went with them because they're just so easy to train and so biddable. They make us look like pros. And I also used my dog raise into, she was a working trail champion, but you know, when we got away from stock to do the 4-H lamb project, she helped me exercise my lambs. So
how funny. They're really good in those areas. So
it is funny. So do you have any stories or background that you want to give us on the Lore line?
Yes. So I guess just to give you a little bit of background, my grandma actually got into it the same way that we did. So when my grandma was about 14 or 15, she wanted to do a 4-H project, and she had these dogs that they had kind of accumulated from some older lines, and she said, "Well, I'll do a 4-H dog project." And her 4-H leader told her, "You need to raise and breed and sell these animals to make it a real 4-H project. You can't just have these pets that you're training." And so my grandma, as this 14 or 15-year-old, started breeding these Australian Shepherds and doing a lot of research into it, into the bloodlines. And her mom got really involved with it as well. Like I said, Laretha Powers, she got super involved in it. And they started purchasing more of the working lines. My grandma did a lot of the 4-H dog shows, same as we did. My great grandma did a lot of the performance side of things, so a lot of obedience, and got real into herding. So our lines go back to the Woods lines. The old Woods lines is where they started with their oldest dogs. And they just continued breeding and working on these dogs. I think they finally registered their first dog in 1969. And so they were pretty old back there. And originally it was called Powers Kennels back when everybody used to just put, their last name at the beginning of their kennel name, at the beginning of their dog's names. And then they transitioned it in the early 1970s. I think they transitioned it over to Lore A Dog Patch is the official name, but we just go with Lore A right now. And so they bred back and forth, like I said, with gathering Woods dogs. They bred with Silver Ledge Kennel from Jean Taylor. Her and my grandma and my great grandma were good friends, so they bred back and forth quite a bit. And then my grandma also bought a dog. They were living in Utah at the time, my grandma and grandpa, in between years of vet school, and they purchased a dog from Terry Martin. And so that dog didn't have the /V kennel name on it, just because at the time Terry wasn't having them put it on at the beginning of her kennel. And so that dog's name was Lore A Gunnison Pete, because at the time Terry was living in Gunnison, Utah. So they just added that into the kennel name. So that's kind of where the foundation Lore A Australian Shepherds came from. So my my grandma started vet school, and she actually only took one of her dogs with her to vet school, and she left the rest with her mom, Aretha, and she continued breeding and showing, and she got pretty heavily involved in herding in the 80s and early 90s. So that was something that was really important to her to continue being involved in.
So, and now is your primary focus as a kennel, the Lori kennel is primarily focused on raising working Aussies, correct?
Yes, yes. And me and my grandma, she continues to breed, and she focuses a little bit more, I guess, on companion dogs, and I really focus on working dogs. My husband and I have talked about it a lot, and we're ranchers, and we need really good ranching dogs. And these Australian shepherds really fill that void. They provide us those fantastic working dogs that we can depend on our ranch, and we know that the puppies are going to work. We don't have a question in our mind if we're going to have a good working dog out of these Australian shepherds, and we know that we're going to produce dogs that we can depend on our ranch. And so, yes, that's our primary goal, is to breed these working dogs that ranchers can depend on to go out and get the job done, and that are really biddable, but also kind of independent workers, so you're not constantly having to watch them and focus on them.
Oh. So the biddability and the independent thinking is huge when you're working on a dog. Even if you're just working on a small farm or a large ranch, you have to have that trait. What other traits, when you're thinking about breeding a dog, that you think, okay, this is what I want in a working dog? What are some of those things?
I think build is really important. We don't want a dog that's going to wear out when they're working hard, especially on some of these larger ranches. We want to make sure that they're going to be able to go long, hard days. And I think that that's something that we really focus on. And that goes back to health. So my grandma, Rebecca Anderson, who started this kennel, she is a veterinarian. And so it's something that she's always really focused on, is ensuring that the dogs are healthy and that they're going to last long. She honestly didn't do any of the health testing for a really long time. And we've just started doing it over the last 5 or so years. And all of these dogs that have come from our lines have had complete clear genetic panels, beautiful hips, beautiful elbows, just because it was so important to her to have these really healthy dogs. And I'm also in vet school, so it's something that we really focus on, is just making sure that we have really healthy dogs. And my grandma was telling me a story the other day that she was talking about her mom, Aretha Powers, and she said she was a hard culler of dogs. She was very, very strict. If a dog didn't look like it was possibly going to work out, or there was maybe possibly any sort of health issue, she didn't get attached and say, I need to keep this dog because I love this dog and I want to keep breeding it. She would say, I'm going to spay or neuter this dog because it does not need to be contributing to the Lori breed. And so my grandma always says that she was so good for the Australian Shepherd breed because she was very, very strict in what dogs were allowed to continue contributing. So.
Well, and I just want to say that is amazing. And that is something our breed needs today more than ever, because we've moved away from, everybody wants to just breed their little fluffy dog and breed them to whatever they want to. And there's this dog with terrible structure that's overweight and doesn't do anything but lay on the couch. And I need to breed that dog. And I always tell people, no, you don't. Yes. Just because a dog can be bred does not mean it should be bred. And when you're talking about your name on a kennel, I mean, you would think that there should be some real pride, and your grandmother actually, had that pride of they're not going to have this kennel name on them unless they're put together right, that they're working dogs, that they have met these certain criteria. And I think that people used to be better about culling than they are now, because, I guess society is a little bit negative on the whole culling thing, but I really appreciate that about her and other people who have done that in the past. Other breeders go back and they say, hey, we have standards, and if the dog doesn't meet the standards, I can love that dog. It can be a great pet dog, but it's not going to be contributing to the breed.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that would get us. Yeah.
there's a lot of people out there who don't want a breeding dog. I mean, there's nothing wrong with spaying or neutering a dog, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's still a fantastic working dog and it needs to go work on a ranch, spayed or neutered. So there's definitely nothing wrong with that. So,
No, exactly. And it's better for our breed and in the long run, health testing wise. And, you know, back in the day, we didn't have all those health testing back in the 80s and 90s. You know, we didn't have this genetic testing that we can do now. We had, you know, hips and elbows and stuff. The dogs, breeders kept in touch with their puppies. They made decisions based on what they saw in front of them, and they made the hard calls. If this dog wasn't 100%, they didn't make it into the breeding program. And I think that that was helpful for our breed to stay as healthy as it has been. Um, anyway, those are so. Back to traits that you like in a dog. We talked about biddability. We talked about structure. What about certain things instinctive wise? What do you like? Do you like dogs that head, heel, both? You know, what kind of instinctive things are you looking for?
we like dogs that are able to do both head and heel. We do a lot of, I guess on our ranch, we really focused on, we kind of gather the herd and then we drive the herd. So we want a dog that isn't purely focused on that gathering, constantly bringing animals to you. So we like to have a dog that's able to drive, able to heel. I personally don't like the dogs that are just so focused on constantly getting that bite in, because I think it turns our cattle into wanting to have a little bit of fight. We have fairly mellow cattle
Mm-hmm.
and they don't need to fight. So I don't want my dog constantly in there picking on the cattle. Now, that's not to say that we don't need a bite from them. We definitely do, and all of ours do, but only when it's necessary, not just to have a little bit of fun and go and get a bite in. So I like a
Mm-hmm.
dog that's really able to read the cattle and know what they're doing and what they need. Something else I
Mm-hmm.
really like is a dog that's able to kind of, I always say that mine can kind of read my mind. While I'm out there working cattle, I'm so focused on what's going on, and maybe if I'm in a little bit of a sticky situation, I don't want to have to worry about where my dog is or if my dog is trying to work against me. And so I
Mm-hmm.
always feel like my dog can kind of read my mind, and he just watches for a second and notices what I'm doing and then adds to what I'm doing to try to help me
Right.
fix the situation. And I never have to say anything to my dog to get him to do that. And that's something that I think is really important is being able to just read the situation, evaluate what's going on, and then jump in instead of just jumping in
Yeah.
blind.
Um, so no, I totally agree with you. When you're working cattle, I was actually just doing a lesson with somebody on sheep, and I said, look, they're not making their dog mind, and the dog was kind of getting in and just doing his own thing. And I said, look, you need to pretend that these are 1,000-pound cows. And then if your dog messes up and gets you in trouble, you're dead. You know, the cows are going to run on the top of you. They could hurt you. They could hurt each other. They could hurt the dog. They could hurt the horses. They could hurt other people that are working if the dog runs in there and causes all this trouble. So I think that that's a
Right.
huge point. I'm really glad that you brought that up because not all dogs have that ability. You know, some of the ones that want to get into a fight will just get in the red zone and then not just drive the cows over you or not even pay attention to what's going on. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So talking about these traits, let's talk about some of the things that your dogs do on your ranch and some of the things that maybe if we're having a conversation with somebody who runs a cattle ranch or has a bunch of sheep, and they really don't know, like, I've never had a dog. I don't even know how to use a dog. What kind of things how would their life change if they had a dog?
So, something that we really, really love about these dogs is that we can go out, just one of us with a dog, and we can get the entire herd moved. And that's something that you would not be able to do. I mean, if you were going out by yourself or even just you and one other person, it would be really difficult to get an entire herd moved in that situation. And I feel like dogs can
Mhm.
take the place of at least a couple people on foot or on four-wheeler or on horseback. Um, and so that's something that I always tell people is, look, if this dog is trained well, and you've shown them what you want them to accomplish, they are going to be so invaluable just because they're taking the place of a couple workers. You're not having to pay employees for that. Um, and
Mhm.
so on our ranch, like I said, our dogs do a lot of gathering and then driving the herd, just switching pastures or taking them to the corral for us to work. We also do a little bit of corral work with our dogs. So we like to have them just help us fill alleys, bring cattle up and load the chute. We don't do a ton of sorting with our dogs, but I will have them like hold a gate or something like that while I'm moving cattle. And I love that they're able to transition from that big open field work into that really focused corral work where every little mistake can really change how the cattle are working in the corral. And so I think it just comes to show that these dogs can really fill a void where you're working, in, like I said, providing that additional couple of people that you don't have to hire because the dog's there to do that. Something else that I really like, I know a lot of people worry that their dog's gonna just constantly be working and they're not going to be able to they're not going to be able to do anything else with them besides work. And I feel like our dogs have such a good off switch, is what I always call it. And I know a lot of people call it that they don't have to work every day. They don't have to work constantly to be a good dog. They understand right now is working time and right now is not working time. My dogs love to lay around the house, to ride in the bed of the truck. They know when they're supposed to stay there, even if I'm going to work the cattle and they don't get to come and they're sitting in the bed of the truck, they know they have to stay there and wait until I call them out. And I think that that's something that, like I said, I don't think people really realize that these dogs can have an off switch. And I think that that's something that makes Australian Shepherds really special as a working breed, is that they do have that. Because I know a lot of our other working breeds don't have a very good off switch. And Australian Shepherds are really, really special in that way, in that they can go out and work and then they can turn it off and play with the kids in the yard, and you don't have to worry about them. So.
Exactly. And even that off switch while you're in the middle of working, while you're, I was just doing vaccinations and tagging lambs, ear tagging lambs the other day. And, the dog helps me gather them. I catch a lamb and then that'll do. The dog will just wait until we're ready to catch another lamb. And, or we're walking from this pen to that pen. I don't have to be constantly lie down, come here. They just shut it off. That'll do. And now we walk to the next one. And I love a dog with an off switch. I have one that does not have an off switch, and it's irritating because she constantly wants to work. Right. And that's a trait that I'm not super fond of, but the other ones, they have that switch, that off switch that look, we can disengage and then we can engage again. So, I like that too. That's a really great thing. So you mentioned something, and I kind of want to go back to a couple of things because, I really want to paint a really clear picture to people who may have never worked a dog before on a ranch. So when you talk about holding a gate, what does that look like with your dogs? Give an example of a time or how you do it and what you do. Give some, paint a picture for us so we can see how that works.
Okay, so in our corrals, we have multiple pens. So usually we'll bring the entire herd into the corral, and let's say that we're trying to sort our cows from our calves. And we'll bring the entire herd into a larger pen in the corral. And then we're working on we have multiple gates in that corral, and we're working on letting cattle through one gate. Let's say that we're just wanting to bring the mama cows through the gate and keep the calves in so that we can vaccinate them or whatever it is that we're needing to do with them that day. And even if we're trying to separate them into separate pens, we can have, let's say, a person at one gate and a dog at another gate, and you can have that dog holding that gate. And what I mean by holding is I try not to have them lay down, just because I feel like Australian Shepherds don't like laying down sometimes because they feel like they're not present. They're not present enough. So I'll just have them stand and stay there sometimes. And when I'm sending cows their direction, if I don't want a cow to go through that gate, I'll tell Flint that I don't want him to let a cattle go through that gate, and he'll just prevent a cow from going through that gate so she can go through the other gate. Or if I want him to allow a cow to go through that gate, then I'll just call him off and tell him to move, and he'll allow a cow to go through that gate. And that's invaluable when you're trying to sort, because like I said, it allows you to have less people that are needing to stand at that gate because there's a dog there. Or if I'm running them down the alley and a gate's open, I can have a dog standing there preventing them from going into that gate that the cattle are probably going to want to go into because there's other cows in the gate. So
It's like having a remote control gate.
yes. Yes, it
which is
is.
always super helpful. Yeah, but then sometimes, yeah. So, and the Aussies, I find that they get that stuff. They understand that kind of work, that chore work, that pen work, the ranch work. They understand it inside their very being, the working bred Aussies, that you don't have to train as much on that kind of stuff. Do you find that as well?
100%. Like I said, I started with Flint as a 14-year-old who knew absolutely nothing. Um, and I put, other than like his obedience training, I put no herding training in. I always say that Flint taught me to herd because he would just kind of look at me and
Yeah.
be like, you are standing in the wrong spot. And so I'd move somewhere else and there you go. He'd have it fixed. I actually have a really funny story about Flint. I don't remember where I was. I was a teenager and my mom had some llamas. My mom loves to collect strange animals and she had a group of llamas and she texted me and said, hey, do you think Flint could help me put the llamas back in their pen? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like I said, Flint had no training, but he was very naturally instinctive and figured out what you wanted him to do. And she called me about 20 minutes later and said, he's not putting them in the pen. I don't know what to do. And I could hear her out there just yelling random commands at him. And I said, go stand by the gate with it open and then tell Flint to bring them to you. So she went and did that, and he immediately brought the llama straight into the pen. And he had no training. He didn't know exactly what they were supposed to do, but he saw her standing at that gate and he said, oh, you want the llamas to go through that gate. I'll make sure that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I feel like they're just so good at doing that, so good at just reading and evaluating the situation. I remember when I first started teaching Flint to work in the corral, he had he had never done anything like that before. And I went through kind of the motions of what we did once and it didn't go great the first time, but then he obviously figured out, oh, this is what you want. And from then on out, he did exactly what we wanted the whole time because he just read what we wanted. And he had, again, no commands on him for me to teach him, move this way 5 feet, move that way 5 feet. He just did it all by himself by watching what the cattle needed and where I wanted them to go. And that is one of my favorite things is that, I always say, I don't want to have an obedience trained stock dog. I want to have a biddable working dog. And I think with that biddability comes that free thinking where he's using his own mind to do what I want him to do. And that is something that I love.
Well, and they can read the stock better than we can and faster than we can. So if they know the job, waiting for us to give a command, it's too late usually. Right. They've missed that moment of opportunity. And so them being able to be biddable and understand the job, but also be able to use that amazing instinct that just controls them. It's just amazing. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. And that's why, it's so important to me to be able to keep that part of them because you can't train that. You can't train that innate understanding to manage cattle and sheep or llamas or whatever it is. It comes from their breeding and it comes from their genetics. And that's why we have to be careful when we do breed so that we can carry this on. I have a young dog now. He's 2, he's copper. And I tell stories about him all the time. And he's got very little training on him because he's required so little training. And he has a lot of Lorraine dogs in him. Your dogs are in his pedigree. So he's got a lot of really good dogs in his pedigree, including the Lorraine dogs. And, I don't have to train him much. He just gets gates. Like I didn't have to train him to put sheep in a pen or a gate. He just like, oh, there's a gate, put it in there. I don't know where that came from, but it was born in him. And that's just something we have to protect. You and I both agree on that big time.
100%. And it's just something I love about him that it's innately built into him. And so even a novice trainer like me can go out there and accomplish things with these dogs. So. Yeah.
And I love watching them when they're pups, they're young pups and you put them on sheep or something. And the dog has no idea what it's doing. It's like its brain is just leading them around the pen because they're just being taken over by this instinct.
Yes.
To fetch, to read the stock, to go this way, to balance, to rate. And they don't know what they're doing. I have a male right now. He's just 1 and he's big and goofy, but he's very talented. And when he goes in there, he's suddenly not clumsy and he's just suddenly he has no idea what he's doing. And he's kind of confused sometimes why he's doing stuff, but because his instinct is just dragging him around the pen. It's kind of hard to describe, but you understand what I'm talking about.
I do. Yeah. I
And
actually
it's
have a
just the
year-old
coolest
that
thing.
does it. I have a year-old dog that is out of Flint, and he's the same way. He's the biggest dork at home, but you put him on cattle and suddenly something just turns on and he is the most focused and knows
Mhm.
exactly where he's going. And then he comes off stalk and he's a big dork again. So
Yeah. And mine was, we put him on cattle for the first time last week. And it was funny because we were watching videos later, and even my husband, who's not a dog trainer, he was like, he has no idea what he's doing. And he had no idea consciously what he was doing, but he was doing it. It's pretty funny. He was going around and fetching them and bringing them together and keeping them in a group, and it was pretty cool.
Yes.
So one thing that you talked about that I kind of want to go back to on the training thing is I like how you said you don't usually have them down. And because Aussies don't like downs, and I really have discovered that it's like a punishment to them almost because
Yes.
they just hate being told to lay down.
Yes.
And so I'm glad you figured that out because they really don't like it.
Yeah.
And I think it puts them, like with cattle and stuff, I think it puts them in a vulnerable position. If
Very
they're
much
laying
so.
down by the heels of cows or even by the heads of cows, it's harder. It takes longer for them to get up, and sometimes they only have it's an instant that they can duck that heel or duck the head, or get away if they are in a tight situation. So
I've noticed the cattle seem to think that the dog is weaker if they're laying down. If my dog's laying down, the cattle will come up to them if they're laying down. Even just to check them out, maybe not even in an aggressive way. But if the dog's standing, then the cattle are like, okay, I'm going to stay away from that. And they avoid them. So I think probably the cattle think the dog is weaker if it's laying down. So the dog feels more vulnerable and weaker if they're laying down. So
I agree with you. That matches my observations as well. And, sometimes there's a place for it though. Like sometimes you need to take the pressure off in a situation. Hopefully the dogs can read it, but if a dog's reading the situation incorrectly or they need to take the pressure off, a down can really, really takes a lot of pressure off. So sometimes, you need it, but I totally agree with your standing stays. So we talked about holding a gate. Do you guys ever use your dogs to hold, say, cattle off a feed or hay or something like that if you're feeding?
Yes, definitely. So our ranch is kind of unique, but I think it's kind of very common for the ranches that we see out here in the Mountain West. So our cattle are not in the same place year round. So we have about 600 mother cows, and in the summer they're actually up in the mountains of western Wyoming, and then in the summer they're down in central Utah, just in the high desert. Or in the winter, they're in the high desert. And our replacement heifers and our first calf heifers stay the entire winter, kind of where home base is in central Utah and some irrigated land that we have, and just so they can be close for those first calf heifers. And those are the only ones that we actually feed hay to. So we feed hay all winter to approximately almost 300 cows between the replacement and the first calf heifers. And we love taking the dogs out with us to feed, just because when we're in that feed truck, we're cutting strings off hay bales, and the cattle will come up and get pretty pushy onto the truck sometimes, which can be dangerous for us. If you're surrounded by 100 heifers that are fighting over food, it can be really dangerous for you. So yes, we've brought the dogs, or we bring the dogs with us to feed every time, whether that's just one or two dogs, and they definitely hold the cattle off of us while we're getting that feed truck ready to start throwing feed out, which definitely keeps it, like I said, it keeps it safer for us. And that's another one of those things that I've never had to teach them to do. It's just, I think Flint saw me one time shooshing cattle away while we were doing it, and he, without a word, every time we go out there, he goes and pushes all the heifers off while we're getting ready to feed, and just keeps them away from us the entire time. And I never have to worry or watch my back that a heifer is going to come up to us. Another thing, I actually posted it on my Facebook page because it was pretty cool. We had a couple weeks ago, we had a downed heifer in the field that couldn't get up, and she had a calf that she was having a hard time getting out, and so we couldn't get her up to take her to our catch pen to pull the calf. So we had to do it right there in the field. And of course, heifers are extremely curious. They really wanted to come see what we were doing. The other ones in the field did. And so Flint was able to hold those heifers off of us while we spent, I don't know, 30 minutes trying to get that calf pulled and the heifer back up.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to keep, once again, us safe and that heifer and her calf safe while we were working on getting that job done. So it's something that I love, is having them have that ability to keep the other cows away from us when we need them to.
Well, that's huge. And, if you think about it, if you're in the middle of a field, it's a 360-degree range they have to cover around you.
Yes.
Because the heifers would be coming from all around. No one person, a human, it would take more than one person to be able to keep all those heifers off. And they don't necessarily may not have the respect for a person that they would have of a dog that's going to bite them on the nose if they misbehave. So having a dog there is it's a huge benefit and such a time saver and a safety issue as well.
Yes.
So, and even if you're listening to this podcast and you don't have 600 head of cattle that you're running, you can still use a dog. And I'll talk for a minute about like the hobby farms, or even smaller in like the southeast part of the US, the cattle farms are a lot smaller. And I have sheep and I have calves about half the year because of feeding here and heat and all that. But, I use it on my sheep, the holding them off the feed on my sheep. It's the same way. You can get trampled and hurt by sheep just as much as you can. Well, maybe not as much as you can with cattle, but they can be dangerous as well. And you can use the dogs no matter what size place you have to do these same chores.
Yes.
You don't have to have, yeah. And that's one thing that's so valuable. I think that's the most valuable tool, is to be able to hold them off of something that you don't want them to get at. Like feed or hay, or like you said, a calf in the middle of the field. That's a huge, huge benefit to have.
Even in your smaller herds. My mom has a small herd of board goats, and she loves using the dogs in those same situations to push away while she's working with another goat, or to help bring her the goats. She loves to use them just to kind of help keep them contained in a small area. If you have a large pasture, but let's say you need to be vaccinating, and maybe you have 10 or 15 sheep or goats, those dogs can keep them in a corner for you, so you can grab and vaccinate, grab and vaccinate, grab and vaccinate. So they kind of take the place of a small pen if the dogs are strong enough to hold them in that corner for you. So there's a lot of uses for them, I think, in all aspects of stockmanship.
So the stockmanship part, the reason we use these dogs is because we're taking care of animals, and we're trying to, and like you said before, you're not looking for a dog that's real bitey and really trying to pick fights with stuff. A stock that is dog broke and used to dogs is usually calmer and safer anyway. I imagine with your large groups, you don't have the opportunity to dog break all of your cattle.
Right.
But if a lot of the smaller situations where you can dog break your cattle or your sheep, they're much more biddable, and the stock is more biddable and safer because they have more respect for people and they have respect for dogs, and they're less spoiled and pushy and annoying and dangerous. If you have a good dog that works them.
Definitely. Well, and even ours, none of our cattle are what most would consider dog broke, but they do learn that they have to respect the dog and they have to move away from that pressure of the dog, but also that dog's not going to hurt them. As long as they're moving and going where they want, then they're usually really pretty calm, and you would look at them and think, oh man, those cattle are really used to stock or used to dogs. They are kind of dog broke in their own way. Because they know and they trust and they understand their relationship with the dog. And then our older cows teach the younger calves. So if I go out and work in a field of just heifers, they're usually very, very flighty around the dogs, until they've had the time to be with the older cows who are not flighty around the dogs and realize that as soon as they see a dog, they don't have to run. And so I think that they kind of just learn from the older cows how to respond to a dog, and then that just gets passed down with each generation. So.
Yeah, and having a dog that's responsible and not overly pushy helps as well too. So
yes, very much.
And when you're talking about any operation and you think, oh, I don't really need a dog, I can just call my cows in, or I use a bucket for my sheep or whatever. At some point, there's going to be either a few that don't want to come in, or they're going to realize they don't want to go in that trailer. They don't want to go in that pen because they're going to get vaccinated or whatever, and a bucket is not going to do it.
Exactly. Or they're going to get loose and say, wow, this newfound freedom, I'm going to go explore
Uh-huh.
all the other fields and neighborhood or wherever they're at. And you need a good dog to help say, okay, you got to get back in the pen. And like you said, a bucket of feed or even the feed truck's not going to convince them at that point to go back where they need to go. So a good dog's necessary for that.
Exactly. And that's another way, you're right, escaping animals. You might have 5 or 6 people required to herd them all back in if they don't want to go, but a dog, you just send them out there and they've already been used to the dog. So they see that dog coming and they're like, oh, dang it, we have to go back now.
Yes.
Because they're used to the dog being in charge.
Yep, exactly. We had a group of heifers get out and the police, of course, called us, and my husband and I went out with Flint, and they were, of course, enjoying roaming the neighboring pastures and going down the road. And Rhett was sitting there talking to the police officer, and they all took off running south. Like I said, we have about 150 replacements, and they were just going as fast as their lungs would allow them, heading south. And there was no way I was going to be able to run and catch them up. And Rhett and the police officer were over by the gate, so they were pretty far away. And I just said Flint and pointed at him, and he just took off running and turned the entire herd of these heifers that were running full speed down that pasture, turned them all around and put them back in the pen. And so one dog was able to do that, and me and Rhett and the police officer, we didn't do anything. So he did the entire job by himself. And I think that's pretty incredible to have that. And I mean, that could have turned into a mess. And like you said, we would have needed at least 5 people to get those heifers back in. And there's no way we would have been fast enough on foot to be able to turn them. So.
Right. Yeah, we've seen, my husband was a deputy sheriff for a long time, and, he was involved in also trying to catch animals all the time. I think that's what sheriff deputies do.
Yes, I think so.
But, we had one here on an interstate. This cow got hit on the interstate, can cause a really bad accident, kill the cow. But also, if you have roads, it's dangerous, for everybody involved to have cows out. So it's just great to have all these examples of how wonderful and useful these dogs are to us.
Yes.
So do you work ever, because you have large groups of cattle, do you work multiple dogs, or are you just pretty much Flint show?
We work multiple. So I talk about Flint a lot. He's kind of my older main ranch dog. So Flint's actually turning 12 next month. So he's a little older. And we only have young dogs. So we have a female that's about 1.5 years, and then a pup out of Flint that's about 1 year old. So yeah, it can get fun sometimes. So we never work all 3 of them together, just because 2 young pups is not a good idea to turn them loose together, but I'll work each of the young pups with Flint. So of course with them being a little younger over the winter, they've learned to keep the cattle off the feed truck and stuff like that. And they've done some of our bigger drives with us, but I think this summer is going to be really good for these younger dogs to spend a lot of time working with Flint, and learning exactly what we need. So we'll run a couple dogs at a time, without any issues. So, and I actually really enjoy doing that because Flint's able to kind of teach the other dog what we need from them. And he knows exactly how to trail cattle to keep them going without too much pressure. And I think it's really good for those younger dogs. I have my female is a go-getter. She gives everything 110%, and she feels like she has to give everything 110%. And so he's been really good for her to teach her, like, we can just trail these cattle. And if one gives us fight,
chill out, girl.
then we'll push them along, but then we can go back to trailing, and it's okay. We can do it at a jog or even a walk. And so he's been real good to train her and to kind of help her learn how to mellow out a little bit and really read cattle. So yes, we love running multiple dogs at a time, just because, if one dog is going to turn it into 2 or 3 more people, 2 dogs is going to turn it into 4 or 5 more people or 6 more people. Right. And so, yeah, we definitely run multiple dogs at a time. And my father-in-law has a couple of border collies that he runs as well. So we definitely love having our dogs out there helping us move the herd and gather them and stuff. So I just talk about Flint a lot because I have cooler stories with him. So
yeah, well, there's always those special dogs that kind of hold a special place in your heart. And then once you've worked with one for so long, it's hard to move on sometimes to the next dog because you've built such a relationship with this dog. But you always have to have one up and coming because an accident could happen, or but still there's those special ones, and I can tell he's one of those for you.
He is, yes. It's funny, my grandma's dog that she got when she was 14, he was a blue merle male named Flint. And mine is a blue merle male named Flint, obviously named after him, that I got when I was 14 too. So it's kind of a fun little thing we have going there. So he's very special to me. But they each are. I mean, my pup that's up and coming, her name's Rain, and I'm just, like I said, I've never seen a dog that just gives so much and is so excited to work and so focused and so driven that, I mean, she's going to be a phenomenal dog. She just needs a little more time till we start having these cool stories about her. So
yeah. Well, those dogs that there's that phrase, you can't push a rope. And so as much as those dogs kind of are a lot of work, sometimes those dogs that are 110%, I have one of those. She'll never quit you, and she'll never run out of steam, and she'll never give up. And so in the long run, that'll all be turned into grit and tenacity that she'll need to get the job done. But they can be a lot when they're young dogs.
Yes. But it's nice having the older ones, and it's nice having them on the ranch where they can, I mean, we do the same thing, and she can run and be all excited as she wants at 10 a.m. But I can guarantee you by 4 or 5 p.m. she's really calmed down and figured out, I don't have to run all the time. I can be calm and the job is still going to get done. So I think it's really good for him to be able to get out and to work and to, I guess, learn those really important life lessons about working stock.
Right. And it can be kind of messy at first, and it can be a little bit, especially if you're not, well, I guess even if you are familiar with dog training and you're good at it, when they're young, they make mistakes, they cause wrecks, they have to learn all those different things. And so when they're young, you kind of think sometimes, oh my goodness, is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to have this partner? Especially if you have one that you've been working with for a long time. And then one day it all just falls together for them. And then you have your new partner, but you have to get through that messy young teenage phase first.
Yes. I love the teenage phase. And she's very intuitive. After she kind of loses her excitement, she's like, okay, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm ready to do anything you want me to do. So, and that's something that I love about her is thankfully she's not the kind that causes those wrecks, which I really appreciate.
Good.
She keeps it pretty calm in that sense. She's just so excited to get out there and work. So, which, like you said, is going to turn her into an awesome dog. So,
oh yeah, that's awesome. And I think that, I don't know, these dogs don't do this because we're forcing them to do this, because you can't force a dog to do this.
Right. It's a punishment not to do it. This is what they were
born to do. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. It would kill them faster not to do it than to do it. And this is what they were born to do. And if dogs could smile, you would see them smiling while they work because they just are so happy to do it.
Yes, I agree.
It's what they live for. Yeah. They're really neat dogs. So, cool. So let's see. What do you, how often do you guys breed litters then?
I have a litter about once a year. I didn't have a female for a while while I was in college. But Rain's kind of been my replacement for that. So we have a litter about once a year. So we're planning on breeding Flint and Rain sometime this winter or next spring. So, but we don't produce a ton of puppies. Me personally, I like to have just 3 or so dogs because I feel like I can really form a good relationship with them. And I don't like to get above that. So yeah, we only have about 1 litter a year just because of that. So
yeah. I find that a lot of stock dog people don't have tons and tons of litters. So that's cool. So where can people find you? You guys have a website, right?
We do, yes. So we have a Laura A. Aussie's website. We're on Facebook, which we're pretty active on. And that's kind of a fun way to see a little bit about what our dogs are doing. So it's just under Laura A. Australian Shepherds. And I need to start posting on there a little bit more history stuff. You talked about history and some of those common dogs that are especially in Betty Williams, W. Lazy J bloodline. So Zephyr, Laura A. Golden Zephyr of J2 is actually Flint's aunt. So Flint's sire is out of
Okay.
the same two that she was. And my grandma always called, her name was Laura A. Star Blue Lady Quinn. She always says that was the ideal dog.
Yep.
That's what we're all trying to work towards, is getting a Quinn. And Quinn is in, I think, pretty much all of the Laura A bloodlines you still see go back to Quinn. And she was just a wonderful, really focused working dog, fantastic family dog. And she was, like I said, what my grandma said, we're always working towards. All Aussies should be like that. She was reserved, or not reserved. She was a really good watchdog, very well built. She actually had Flint's dad's litter at the age of 10. So.
Wow. She is in
Little old.
my dog Hopper's. Yep, she is in. I'm looking at his pedigree right now. She is in my dog Hopper's pedigree. He has Laura Golden Zephyr of J2, who Betty Williams or somebody bred to Crown Point Red Baron of W Lazy J.
Yes.
So, and so that produced W Lazy J, J2 Blazing Baron, who, produced a Riverbanks, a right-hand man lefty, who Matt Mason has lefty. He's out of the Northeast, I believe, Massachusetts or Vermont or somewhere up there. And that dog has produced a lot of puppies. So anyway, that's cool. Yeah. And I like that you're talking about actual dogs so that everybody can go pull their pedigrees out and see the names of some of these really great dogs that we're talking about. So, and I like to hear that.
And Zephyr, so my grandma actually kept Zephyr for a little while. She was telling me a story about her, and she said nobody wanted her because she was just a plain old black tri. So she had her till she was a little bit older. And then she had a friend in New Mexico who had a brother in Montana that was looking for a good working dog. And she just gave Zephyr to him. So they ended up just getting Zephyr as a pet, which of course was really good for our bloodline because they did a lot with Zephyr. They really helped to kind of prove our line, and Witch Eater, she was a Hall of Fame. So just some really great things done with Zephyr.
Oh, cool. That's neat. You just never know. Some of those dogs that people don't want at first become some of the greatest dogs.
They do, yep. And color does not make a good dog, so.
No, all my dogs are black tries. I have one red dog, Hopper's red. So the rest of them are all black, but they're nothing fancy. My first Aussie was a blue Merle. My second Aussie was a blue Merle. My third Aussie was a blue Merle. But all of them lately have been black tries.
Yeah.
So I always tell everybody it's so that my husband can't tell when we add a new one in there. So
hey, that's what I need to do.
There's a new dog in there. Yeah. There's a new dog. Wait, you're counting? No.
That's not new. We've had that one. Something else I wanted to talk a little bit about is, so we've never really trialed. I personally haven't. Like I said, my great grandma did a lot of trialing. But I decided last year I was going to get into trialing, and I took Flint to both his and my first trial ever. We went up to Idaho with Aska of Idaho, and they're a wonderful group, really good mentors. And we went to our first one, and Flint had never, ever seen or worked sheep or ducks in his entire life.
Oh.
So, but I just went and did everything. I said, why not? We'll try it. And I was so proud of him because, I mean, cattle went about as I expected. He knows how to read cattle. We know how to work cattle together. And sheep, I remember his first time, he was like, wow, those things are flighty. But we got through the course and got a qualifying score on his first time working sheep. And I was so proud of him. And same thing with ducks. I think ducks was the most interesting thing for me to watch him do, is because he totally changed his working style to the needs of those ducks. He said, oh, okay, I need to, back off them a little more, slow down, really like focus and watch them. And that's how I get him to work. And he earned his title in ducks. And I was so proud of him. I just thought it was really neat to watch the change in working style across stock on his first time ever seeing those stocks. He was able to completely change how he worked. And I think that that's another cool thing that goes back to our working dogs, is just these Australian Shepherds are able to work anything. And they watch those stock and they read those stock and they learn how to balance and rate them, each different species of stock differently. So.
And I kind of think that along with bloodlines and breeding, experience. Flint has a lot of experience
Yes,
working. He works a job on a regular basis. And so his experience and his wisdom over the years was able to help him out as well.
definitely. I could not
Um,
have taken a puppy and done that.
no, no. And a lot of times if you just trial or you just have lessons and you don't have your own stock, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing
Right.
at all. And some people might hear, oh man, my dog would never do that. Or and you feel disappointed in your dog. It's not necessarily the dog. Sometimes it's just the experience they have.
Yes.
This dog works for a living, and it's not a big deal for him to go work because he does it every day. Whereas,
Right.
some people may have a dog that doesn't get to work as often and everything is really exciting and it's a big deal. Doesn't mean anything's wrong with your dog. It just means your dog needs more miles.
Yes,
But that is an
definitely.
awesome story. And I love that, those old dogs just, they're special.
They
They're
are.
just
Yeah.
special. That is congratulations on that.
Thank you. It was pretty fun.
Are you going to keep trialing in the future or?
We are, yes. So we were kind of bummed, of course, with everything that's going on. The ones we were planning on going to this summer have gotten canceled, and I'm actually planning on taking Rain up to Betty Williams cow camp. So Rain comes directly out of her stock.
Which one?
I'm hoping to do the later cow camp, so later in August. So
Okay, I did the later one last year,
oh,
and
cool.
I'm thinking about doing it again this year. It is awesome. I don't know if have you ever been
I
to cow
haven't.
camp?
No, I figured this is a good
Ugh.
opportunity for me and Rain to learn together.
Ugh.
So
Well, first of all, we don't have mountains here in Texas, and just being on that huge ranch is awesome. And you're probably used to the huge ranch part, but it is beautiful, and just being out there is just peaceful. And Betty she's amazing, and she has a very calm spirit that's very gentle and open, and everybody's welcome. And she's just wonderful. She's just wonderful. And we actually got to go on a cattle drive when she took her cows down from summer pasture to winter pasture or something like that, and it was really neat. Which wouldn't be as exciting for you because you do it all the time, but
it's still fun.
we got to do it and it was fun.
I'm excited to meet all the different dog people and kind of start getting a little bit into that world of working Aussies. So I'm really excited about it.
It is exciting, and trialing is, it's not real ranch work, and it's totally different. The farm trial program that ASCA has, the farm and the ranch trial program, I really like it because the farm trials are put together as if you're doing chores on a farm, and you could take an Aussie with minimal training, and this is where they shine. They understand how to clear pens. They understand how to hold gates. They know how to sort, and they know how to do all these different things. It's real life work, and I love it. Trialing is not real life work at all, so it can be more stressful on us and the dog because it's more precise. It's more you have to nitpick on them, and on a lot of Aussies can't take the nitpicking. Those old working lines, they're thinkers, and they're like, don't pick on me, or I don't like that. So they'll either tune you out, or they'll sit there and stare at you and be like, are you done? So trialing but it's good for us to become better trainers, because we can always watch people and say, oh man, if my dog had a little bit more finesse, it would make things easier. Or there's times when it may not be a natural move, but you need the dog to do something, and it makes us better trainers, I think. And so that part of it I really enjoy. So I'm glad you're going to start trialing, because our program can use more people and more young people and people who have real life working dogs. So exciting.
Yes, and I'm excited, and I'm trying to learn that balance between, I don't want to take away my dog's ability to think on its own, but to develop some of that, in some instances, unnatural finesse. And as a trainer, I'm trying to learn how to find a balance between the two of those as I'm preparing, especially Rain, for trialing. I mean, I probably won't do a ton with Flynn. I might do some of the farm trials with him, but I plan on really doing it with her. But I don't want to take away her ability to think on her own and to be able to successfully work livestock on our ranch. So it is a fun balance. So
it is, and it's something I've been working on too lately. This copper dog is just so natural and talented, and I've been trialing my other dog Harley, and we're trialing for finals. So I've been really trying to put a lot of training on her and a lot of control, and I have to be careful with him because I'm like, look, I don't want to take away this brilliant thinking dog that does this amazing stuff on his own. So I totally agree with you. It is a balance, and I will catch myself being a little too controlling, and I'm like, wait, let him figure this out, and that's to me more beautiful. But It's good. It's good for us. It's a good stretch for us. And it's also good for our dogs to do different things that are challenging too.
I agree.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, this hour has flown by. I'm so excited. This was such a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your dogs and sharing some of the history of the Australian Shepherds with us today.
Of course, I really appreciate that you're doing this podcast. I think it's a great way to highlight our working dogs and what they were bred to do and where they came from and where they're going. And I just appreciate that you take the time to talk to us and that you invited me on the show. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to talk to you too. And I find that our audience is growing, and I really hope that this podcast does help develop, preserve, encourage each other, and give some history, and also, where we're going, and gives us some focus and some future plans as well too. So
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, and that's the show today. Thanks for joining me. I hope you really enjoyed it and got to learn something about this amazing breed, the Australian Shepherd. Join us on Facebook. We have a private group called the Instinctive Australian Shepherd. Join the group and join the conversation there. You can also find us online at theinstinctiveaussie.com. That's where you'll find all the show notes, the links to anything we talked about this show, and all of our past episodes. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you find your favorite podcasts, and that way you'll be the first ones to know as soon as an episode is uploaded. All right, everyone, I'll see you down the road.